My cousin stood up in front of everyone and said Lexi was a trophy and I was disrespecting my ex, then turned around and sent anonymous tips to my job calling my girlfriend a predator. I didn't flinch. I called my aunt on speaker. I knew it was going to be weird walking into that room. I just didn't realize how weird. My name is Clara. I'm 28 years old, living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I work behind the scenes at the Durham Civic Playhouse, handling lighting rigs and fixing ancient soundboards. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. That night, I wasn't there to run a show. I was there for Harriet, my mentor, my escape hatch when I was a messed up kid with a soldering iron and no friends. Harriet was retiring after 42 years in the theater, and she wanted me at her send-off. I brought Lexi, my girlfriend, and her son, Milo. Milo's 15, tall and gangly with too much hair in his face. He insists I'm not a stepmom, which I'm cool with, but lately he's been hovering closer like he wants to be. We walked into the community center and were met with warm light and cater trays and the kind of laughter that's been going on for decades. Harriet gave me the biggest smile and threw her arms around me. She hugged Lexi, too, and gave Milo a little wink. But as we moved further into the room, I started noticing the stares. Some of them were subtle, glances that slid off Lexi's leather jacket like rain. Others were more obvious, whispered comments, a turned head. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I didn't have to. I recognized that look, that quiet judgment, and then I saw them. Fiona, my cousin, my former best friend, maid of honor at my never-happened wedding, and beside her, Darren, my ex. My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen either of them in nearly 4 years. Fiona looked just like I remembered, perfectly styled, arms crossed, eyes narrowed like I owed her something. Darren didn't meet my gaze. He was already pretending to scroll through his phone, even though there was no signal inside the building. Harriet clinked her glass for a toast and I tried to focus. I really did. But the second the applause died down, Fiona made a beeline for the back hallway. I knew that walk. She wasn't going to the bathroom. I followed her instinctively. She was waiting for me in the catering kitchen, arms folded, mouth tight. You really thought this was appropriate? She hissed. I blinked. What? You brought her? Lexi. I stared at her. Harriet invited us. All of us. Fiona scoffed. Darren saw her and nearly had a panic attack. You should have thought about that. My mouth fell open. What are you even talking about? She's triggering for him. You know how he is about abandonment. His dad walked out for some artsy older woman and now you show up with my girlfriend? Fiona flushed. It's not considerate. I leaned back against the counter stunned. So this isn't about Lexi. It's about you. About how you think I shouldn't be happy. Fiona's face twisted. No, it's about boundaries. You've flaunted your whole new life and now you're throwing it in his face. I just shook my head. I couldn't even process it yet, but I knew something was off. Something deep and rotten that had nothing to do with Lexi. You're not mad for Darren, I said slowly. You're mad because I moved on. Because I found something better, and you're stuck with my leftovers. The slap never came, but her eyes said it wanted to. She turned on her heel and stormed out. I stayed in the kitchen a moment longer, letting the silence sink in. I had come here to honor a woman who gave me everything and instead walked straight into the middle of a war I didn't even know I was still fighting. I didn't go looking for her again, but of course Fiona found me. I had stepped outside to get some air, trying to shake off the sour taste from our first run-in. Harriet's party was still buzzing inside, old stagehands and community donors laughing like nothing was wrong. I stood near the back of the building, just beyond the patio lights, sipping lukewarm lemonade from a plastic cup. That's when Fiona appeared again, arms crossed like she'd never uncrossed them. You don't get it, do you? She said, walking straight up to me. You've got no idea what you put him through. I didn't answer. Not yet. He was a mess after you left. Months of therapy. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. That wasn't because of me, I said calmly. That was because you manipulated him into thinking I didn't care about him anymore. And he believed you. Fiona's lips pressed into a thin line. Let's not pretend you didn't orchestrate that whole thing, I continued. You played both sides until he didn't know which way was up. And when I backed off, you swept in. She stepped closer. You walked away from him. You pushed me. I hadn't planned to say that out loud, but there it was, just hanging in the air between us. Fiona's eyes darted toward the glass doors. Inside, Lexi was talking to Harriet near the punch bowl. Milo sat beside them, quietly peeling the label off a bottle of sparkling water. Darren's dad left when he was 9, she said, like she was reading it off a case file. He didn't even say goodbye, just disappeared with some freelance sculptor from Asheville. His mom never recovered. I exhaled. So now he sees her. She jerked her head toward Lexi. And it brings it all back. The older artist. The abandonment. It's like reliving it. That's not my responsibility, I said flatly. And you know it. He can't help it, she whispered. Trauma doesn't just go away. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I saw it. This wasn't about Darren. Not really. It was about Fiona. About the way her voice wavered when she talked about his pain. Like she needed it to be real so that she could matter. Like Darren's trauma was the only thing anchoring her to something bigger than herself. You're not scared for him, I said slowly. You're scared of me. She blinked. What? You're scared of what I am now. That I moved on. That I didn't fall apart like you hoped I would. That I found someone good and didn't break. She didn't answer. So I leaned in and said it plainly. You didn't win, Fiona. You just settled. Then I turned and walked away before she could twist it into something else. Back inside, the air felt warmer, louder. Harriet was in full host mode now, moving from table to table like the mayor of some small town, hugging everyone twice and telling the same story 3 different ways. I rejoined Lexi and Milo at a table near the front, my shoulders still stiff from the last 10 minutes. Everything okay? Lexi asked, her voice low. I nodded, but she saw through it. She cornered you again, didn't she? I didn't answer, just looked at Milo, who was busy stirring whipped cream into his soda like a mad scientist. She won't ruin this, Lexi whispered, brushing her hand across mine under the table, but she already had. Across the room, Darren and Fiona sat huddled at a table of their own, far enough away to keep the peace, close enough to keep watch. Fiona whispered something to Darren, and he glanced over his shoulder, at us, at Lexi, and then looked away. Harriet got up and made another round of introductions. She reached our table and beamed. This is Lexi, everyone. She's the reason Clara hasn't burned out entirely. And this young man here, this is Milo, who helped rig the lights for last summer's production of Pippin. Milo gave an awkward little wave. Lexi smiled, gracious as ever, even as the surrounding table offered only tight-lipped nods. After Harriet moved on, I could feel the weight settle again, the whispers returning, the not-so-subtle glances. Fiona's voice was too low to hear, but I didn't need to. I knew the rhythm. She was feeding him lines and Darren was chewing on them like gravel. Dessert arrived, a tower of chocolate-covered strawberries in tiny cheesecake squares, and that's when it happened. Darren stood up slowly. He held a fork in one hand like he didn't realize it. His voice rang out louder than it had any right to. So this is what we're doing now? The room fell quiet. I mean, is no one gonna say anything? He said, looking directly at Lexi. You just move on from your dead partner, what, like a year later? Bring your new trophy around to events like this, like we're all supposed to pretend it's normal. Darren, Harriet said sharply. No, I'm sorry, but it's not okay. And bringing your kid into it? Pretending this is some happy family? It's disrespectful. You're disrespecting him. Lexi stood slowly. Her face didn't change, but I felt the shift in her. Calm, collected fury. You do not get to rewrite my story because it makes you uncomfortable, she said. And you sure as hell don't get to weaponize my grief because you're still stuck in yours. Milo looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. I stood beside her. We're not here to impress you. We came to support Harriet. If you can't handle that, you're free to leave. The silence was thick. No one knew what to say. Harriet stepped forward, gently placing a hand on Lexi's shoulder. I invited them, and I'm proud to call them family. It should have ended there, but it didn't. The damage was done. The fracture was exposed, and everyone saw it. We didn't even stay to help clean up. As soon as Harriet took Milo aside to give him a quiet, gentle goodbye hug, I grabbed the car keys from my purse and said, "Let's go." Lexi nodded without a word, squeezing my hand once before letting go. I'll catch up, she whispered. She meant it. Lexi knew how to talk people down, how to defuse a bomb without anyone realizing there was one to begin with. I didn't have that skill. I had adrenaline. I had fire behind my teeth. Milo followed me out without asking questions. The night air hit us hard, still thick with southern humidity, and we walked to the car in silence. I unlocked it, climbed in, and waited for Milo to settle in the back seat. Once we were both inside, he spoke. Did I do something wrong? His voice was so quiet it didn't feel like it belonged to him. Not Milo, the kid who made jokes about every boring school assembly and once called his PE teacher Cardio Hitler under his breath. My chest tightened. No, baby, you didn't. But Darren was yelling about you guys bringing me. Like it was bad. That wasn't about you, I said. That was about him. And the stuff he hasn't dealt with. It's not your job to carry that. Milo picked at a thread on his jeans. He looked at me like I wasn't supposed to be there. I turned in my seat. You're supposed to be everywhere we are. Got it? That man doesn't know you. He doesn't see you. He nodded but didn't look up. Lexi didn't even yell. She just stood there like a statue. She's good at that. Not freezing, just holding it together for everybody else. He finally met my eyes. You love her a lot, huh? Yeah, I said. I really do. He leaned his head back and stared at the ceiling of the car. I hope I get someone like that someday. God, that hit me like a sucker punch. I reached back and squeezed his knee, not trusting myself to say anything else, not without choking up. A few minutes later, the passenger door opened, and Lexi slid in. Her jaw was tight, her eyes a little glassy, but her hands were steady on her lap. Everything okay? I asked. I didn't throw a punch if that's what you mean, she said softly. But I might have made Harriet cry. In a good way. I smiled. That counts. None of us spoke after that. I drove home in silence while Lexi stared out the window and Milo watched the back of her head like it held the answers to everything. The night wasn't over, but the war had started. The call came the next morning while I was still nursing my second cup of coffee, sitting at the kitchen table in my pajamas, trying to pretend things were fine. Clara, hey, it's Janelle from the council. You got a sec? Janelle never called casually. She was my director at the Community Arts Council and always texted first unless something was urgent. I straightened up. Yeah, sure. Everything okay? There was a pause. Listen, I just got a couple of weird messages. Anonymous submissions through the community tip line. Thought you should know. My stomach sank. Messages about what? Well, about you. And Lexi. My throat went dry. Janelle continued, her voice slow and careful. They were vague but nasty. Stuff about inappropriate influence on youth programming, and someone called your partner a predatory figure with the pattern of replacing grieving families. My hand curled into a fist on the table. Are you serious? I am. I didn't believe a word of it, but the board flagged it. We have to document it and meet about it. Meet about what? There's no truth to any of it. I know, she said quickly. But the timing, Clara. After the retirement event, somebody's trying to make trouble. I stared down at the mug in my hands, suddenly unsure whether I wanted to throw it or just cry into it. Janelle exhaled. There's more. Of course there is. Someone sent screenshots from social media, comments, posts. One of them tagged you in a thread about undermining traditional families. Another said, be careful who you let mentor your kids, some people prey on grief. I didn't need to ask who was behind it. Fiona. She'd found the softest part of me and pressed down hard, my job, my reputation, the work I'd built in the arts community for nearly a decade. She knew exactly where to aim. Janelle cleared her throat. I don't want to do this, Clara. But we have to open a review. No suspension, nothing formal. Yet, I echoed. After we hung up, I sat there staring at the wall, my face burning. I could hear Milo in the living room, arguing with the video game on his headset. I could hear Lexi humming in the backyard, watering her tomato plants like it was just a normal Saturday. And in a way it was. It was normal for someone in my family to hurt me, twist the truth, then hide their hands when the damage bloomed. I walked into the bedroom, found my laptop, and opened it. My inbox was already pinging with the meeting invite from Janelle. Lexi stepped inside as I shut the lid. You okay? No, I said. But I will be. She nodded, reading me like a well-worn book. What do you need? I looked at her for a long second before answering. I need them to see I'm not afraid of them anymore. Because I wasn't. Not now. Not ever again. That night, just as I finished brushing my teeth, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something in my gut told me to answer. Hello. A quiet voice came through the line, raspy and rushed. Clara? It's Aunt May. I blinked. My mom's older sister. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe a year. Hi, is everything okay? No, not really. I shouldn't be calling, but I needed to tell you something. I heard what happened at Harriet's thing. And today, Janelle called your mother. Word's getting around. I sighed and sat down on the edge of the bed. Of course it is. I wanted to warn you. But more than that, I want you to understand why Fiona's doing all this. I know why. She's petty. She's always been petty. It's more than that, Aunt May said. She knows Lexi is rich. My breath caught. What? She's not just some retired designer, Clara. Lexi's wealthy, quietly but significantly. She holds at least 2 architectural patents, commercial installations, built private resorts in Tahoe and Aspen. I checked through a friend. I couldn't speak. She's worth more than she lets on. And Fiona's known for a while. Darren has a guy in real estate, remember Tom Landry? Yeah. He flagged a property a few months ago when Lexi co-signed for a studio space downtown. Darren traced the paperwork. Fiona put the rest together. I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. So this whole meltdown isn't about Darren or family drama. It's about Lexi's money. It's about control, Aunt May whispered. Fiona's always needed to feel above you. She couldn't handle the idea that you landed someone successful. Not just emotionally, but financially. It shook her. My mind raced. I'd known Lexi had worked in luxury design. I'd seen the sleek sketches and heard a few name drops, but we didn't talk about money. Ever. She paid for groceries sometimes, drove an older Subaru, lived modestly. I have to ask, I said finally. Why are you telling me all this? Because your mother won't. And I'm tired of watching this family eat itself alive while pretending it's polite. She hung up before I could say thank you. I sat there staring at the phone in my hand, heart pounding. Lexi hadn't lied to me. Not directly. But she'd kept this part of herself hidden, tucked away under layers of normalcy and quiet charm. I walked into the living room where she and Milo were curled up on the couch watching an old horror movie. She looked over and smiled. That easy, warm smile that had pulled me in from day one. And now I didn't know what to do with it. Because it wasn't about the money. It was about the fact that she never told me. And Fiona had known before I did. I sat down beside them, trying to keep my face neutral, my voice steady. The storm inside me hadn't passed. It had just found a new center. The next morning, I woke up before either of them. I padded into the kitchen barefoot and made coffee like usual, but something about the sound of the machine sputtering felt louder than it should have. I kept watching the backyard through the window, the way Lexi knelt by the far fence, sketching something in a notepad while Milo held up a tape measure. They were planning something. A garden maybe, or another mural like the one Lexi helped Milo paint on his bedroom wall last fall. I used to love that about her, how she always had a project brewing, how she made everything feel like a collaboration. But now watching her with that same calm smile, I felt off. Not angry, not exactly, just disoriented. When Lexi came back in, she dropped her sandals by the door and headed for the fridge. Her hair was up in a messy twist. She wore the same faded t-shirt from her college reunion and looked every bit like the woman I'd fallen for. Simple, easygoing, down to earth. Except she wasn't just that. She was more. She was wealthy apparently, quietly powerful. And I'd had no clue. Hey, she said, opening the fridge. We were thinking of turning the back fence into a vertical herb wall. Milo's obsessed with rosemary all of a sudden. I nodded but didn't respond. She turned. Everything okay? I hesitated. Then before I could overthink it, I asked, why didn't you ever tell me? Her brow furrowed. Tell you what? That you're not just comfortable but loaded. Her face didn't change right away. She just closed the fridge and leaned against the counter, hands folded in front of her. I was wondering when that was gonna come up, she said. So it's true. She nodded. It is. And you didn't think that was worth mentioning? She exhaled slowly. I didn't hide it, Clara. I just didn't lead with it. That's not who I am anymore. I walked away from all of that after my partner died. The money came from projects I barely remember finishing. But Fiona knew. Darren knew. People I've cut out of my life somehow knew more about the woman I sleep next to than I did. Lexi looked down at the floor. I didn't want you to see me as a bank account, or feel like I was trying to rescue you. I never needed rescuing. I know that, she said quickly. That's why I fell in love with you. The words landed softly, but my stomach still tightened. She stepped closer, reaching for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't move either. I've spent most of my life around people who measured love in dollars, she said. I never wanted you to wonder if I was one of them. So you decided for me. Lexi nodded. I did. We stood there in the middle of our tiny kitchen, surrounded by the hum of the coffee maker, the faint sound of Milo playing music from the other room, and the space that had suddenly opened between us. It wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. I'm not mad, I said finally. But I am. Processing. That's fair, she said softly. We stood in that silence for a long moment. It was the first real distance we'd had, and neither of us knew quite how to cross it. I didn't plan to go to my parents' house. I didn't plan anything really. I just got in the car and drove, hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary, eyes fixed on the cracked road like it owed me something. The front door was open when I got there, typical for Sunday afternoons. I stepped inside without knocking, just like I used to when I was 17 and furious about curfews. Fiona's voice drifted in from the living room. She didn't even flinch, she was saying. Just stood there like she was untouchable. I stepped into the doorway and saw her sitting on the edge of the recliner, flanked by my mom and Aunt Diane. She was holding court, crossed legs, wine glass in hand, her voice sweet and venom-laced. Darren stood near the fireplace, sipping beer and pretending to look at family photos like he hadn't memorized every inch of that wall decades ago. Fiona saw me first. She smiled, small and smug. Well, look who I cut her off. Put your phone down. What? I'm calling Aunt May. You remember her, right? The one who actually pays attention when people talk. My mom looked confused. Clara, what is this? I pulled my phone out, tapped the speaker icon and called. It rang once, twice, then, Clara. I turned up the volume. You told me last night that Fiona knew about Lexi's finances through Darren's real estate friend. Remember that? Fiona's mouth opened. Aunt May's voice came through. Yes, that's true. Silence fell like a dropped tray of silverware. Darren froze mid-sip. Fiona stood up. You tricked her into that. No, I said, voice calm. I just let her confirm what you've been denying. That all of this, your little morality show, your obsession with my girlfriend, your whispered slander, is about money. About the fact that I'm happy with someone you can't control. You don't know what you're talking about, she snapped. Don't I? I walked closer. You tried to turn this family against me over a woman you envy. You spread lies at my job, humiliated Lexi in public, and made Darren your emotional puppet. All because you couldn't stand that I moved on. Fiona's face twisted. I was trying to protect him. No, I said. You were trying to protect your place. Your illusion that you're still the center of this family. My father finally spoke up from the corner, his voice low and uncertain. Is that true, Fiona? Her eyes darted to him, to my mother, to Darren, who was now looking at the floor like it had answers. Her mouth moved like she wanted to lie, but nothing came out. Then she snapped. You always win, don't you? She said, pointing at me. Ever since we were kids. You get the attention, the sympathy, now the money. You always end up the one they choose. I blinked. That's what this is about? I asked. Being chosen? She didn't answer, because she didn't need to. Everyone in that room could see it now what this really was. Not about Lexi, or Darren, or trauma. Just Fiona, clinging to a version of herself that stopped being real a long time ago. Fiona's hand was still in the air, her finger aimed at me like I was a loaded gun. The room had gone dead quiet. Even my mom, who usually played peacemaker with a tight smile and a pot of decaf, sat frozen on the couch, one hand covering her mouth. Darren shifted beside the fireplace, looking like he wanted to melt into the wall. For once, he didn't defend her, didn't offer up some weak excuse. He just stared at his shoes. I married him to beat you, Fiona said suddenly, like the confession had clawed its way out of her throat. I blinked. Excuse me, she laughed, dry and bitter. I mean, let's just say it out loud. You left, and he was still here, broken and confused. And I thought, why not? I could win. I could finally win. My father stood up slowly. Fiona, he said, voice low and unfamiliar, that's enough. But she kept going. I saw how everyone looked at you, Clara, the talented one, the brave one. Even after everything fell apart, they still made excuses for you. And I thought if I could just take something from you, maybe I'd matter more. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see the girl who used to braid my hair at sleepovers or pass notes in church. I saw someone trapped inside her own bitterness, someone who had spent years arranging her life like a revenge board, then couldn't figure out why she still felt empty. You didn't take anything from me, I said quietly. You just inherited my regrets. Fiona's eyes filled, but she blinked it away fast. Always in control. Always trying to be the most composed woman in the room. You owe me an apology, my father said. His voice was firm now, cutting through the static. For what you've done to your cousin, to this family. Fiona looked like she might protest, but then her mouth snapped shut. She didn't apologize, but she didn't deny it either. I turned to the door. No speech. No dramatic exit. Just steps, slow and even, toward the front hallway. You're just going to walk away? Fiona called out. I stopped, turned slightly. I've been walking away from you since the day you lied to him. She flinched. Then I looked at the rest of them, my mom, still pale and quiet, Darren, arms crossed, guilt twisting his face, my father, standing with disappointment in his shoulders but pride in his eyes. I didn't come here to fight, I said. I came to put this down. For good. And I walked out, because silence was louder than any argument. And finally, after years of circling the same flame, I was done getting burned. It was Sunday again, the kind of slow morning where the air smelled like grass clippings and neighbors' pancakes. No drama, no phones buzzing. Just the low hum of a quiet life. I stood in the doorway to the backyard, coffee mug warm in my hands, watching Lexi and Milo crouch side by side near the fence. They were painting. Big, sweeping strokes across the paneling, deep greens and soft oranges, shapes I couldn't quite make out yet. Milo was laughing about something Lexi said. His whole body relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. There was paint on his cheek, a smear of teal in Lexi's hair. Neither of them cared. And watching them, something inside me just stilled. Not because everything was fixed. Not because the war was over. But because I had chosen something better than revenge. Peace. I stepped outside barefoot, gravel cool against my heels, and walked toward them. Lexi looked up first. She smiled, not the tight, careful kind she used when dealing with polite strangers, but the kind that belonged only to us. You gonna help, or just supervise? She asked, waving a brush toward me. I'm thinking about it. Milo looked over his shoulder. You're gonna mess it up. I laughed. Probably. Lexi handed me a brush anyway. I took it, dipped it in a soft yellow, and knelt beside them. No big declarations, no make-up speeches, just paint, and presence, and 3 people who had survived something together. I thought about Fiona for half a second, about her pale face when I walked out, the way her voice cracked when she realized I wasn't playing anymore. I thought about Darren, about my parents, about the years I spent shrinking to make room for their expectations. And then I let it go. All of it, because this backyard, with its patchy lawn and half-painted fence, was more mine than any family dinner or retirement party or forced apology ever had been. I looked at Lexi, her eyes focused, brush gliding in smooth, practice lines, and reached out with my free hand. She took it without looking. Not everything had healed yet, but the worst was over. And in that moment I didn't feel like someone who had won a fight. I felt like someone who had stepped away from one. That was enough. That was everything.